Here was the longest, loneliest, most aggravating time of my life. I had just left a baby boy and a good wife at home at Fort Lewis, Washington, and wound up here in Korea, up on the north, by the DMZ at Mortar Battery 1st Battle Group, 32nd Infantry of the 7th Infantry Division. One of the most God-forsaken places you've ever seen. These are some scenes of our compound. There's the end of the NCO mess hall. I was fire direction NCO for the battery, and we were a battery of heavy mortars, 4.2 inches. There's a shot of our shower unit that pumped cold water out of the creek and ran it through diesel heaters. We were all precautioned never to open our mouths while taking a shower. There's a typical outdoor urinal. And here one of the gun sergeants that traipsed around behind me from Fort Lewis to Korea is Walt Morgeau Jr. or Tad Morgeau. There's Sergeant Redmond, Chief of Firing Battery, inspecting the mortars laid out for inspection in a visit by General Sandy Sanford. Camp Hovey was the name of this place. It was about 9 miles from the major city, which was division headquarters at Dongducheon, and that in turn was about 39 miles north of Seoul. Here's a typical battery party. We were on very severe. There's Owen Creech, the supply sergeant. There's some of the guys from my section. There's Sergeant Redmond hiding his face. It's probably because he doesn't want any pictures taken and may be wanted for some heinous crime in the United States. There's Sergeant Beverding, the guy that was chuckling. He was my boss, operations sergeant. There's Roger Hawley, one of the senior gun sergeants. There's a guy by the name of Humayun Akavi, direct descendant of the former Emir of Iran, acting sergeant. There's me, little engine and big engine, Tad Morgeau and me. Here's Libby Bridge, which goes across the river to Panmunjom. This bridge, by the way, was on my firing charts. We had one battle group across there from the 3rd Infantry Division. Here's a picture of a monument for the 1st Cavalry when they crossed the 38th parallel. They list there that they were the first to cross the 38th and the first to get to the Yalu River. But one of the things they failed to mention, they were also the first to lose their regimental colors in combat. You can still see some of the entrenchments and diggings that the Chinese had made along those ridge tops when they occupied here. There's the 38th parallel, 8th Army I Corps, 1st Corps monument. You'll see the seasons change from autumn to springtime at the same monument scene, and a few more hooches built beside the roadway there. Here's a village. Excuse me, a visit through the countryside, and there's what's known as a kimchi bus. A bus converted from a deuce-and-a-half truck and the use of a lot of flattened out barrels for body work. There are some of the entrenchments and diggings made by both the Chinese and United States forces as we crossed back and forth and lost and gained this ground. Max Effective, there's Miss Jeannie's store. These were known to us as Slicky stores. These little village market places you could buy back out of the things that you got stolen from you the night before. You could buy virtually anything you could lay name to in most of these little places. Here's a rice paddy that was ran right up to the fence out the back door of our NCO billets, and which was just up the ridge a little from the main command post for our battery. One thing that's missing here is the smell. You see, in the wintertime, all of these rice paddies are laced with human excrement, and when the first spring breezes warm things up and the old man gets out there with his bowl to stir it around, it's quite an unbelievable experience. Here's some more of our compound looking to the south from our northeastern corner, and this is a Korean funeral procession, quite a colorful thing. People there are buried sitting up, so that's why you have an odd shape to the casket. In this case, it happened to be a young business girl from the nearby village of Tokari who had committed suicide over the loss of some GI who probably promised to marry her, something like that. Here's Camp St. Barbara, named after the patron saint of the artillery, which was also I Corps headquarters. And here's where I went to the NCO Academy. There's Sergeant Crosby, a friend and one of the gun section leaders from my unit. There's one of the platoon leaders, or sergeants, Sergeant Williams. Sergeant Hare, the mess sergeant, me smoking a cigar. Here's an aside trying out slow motion on my camera with an L-21 Beaver liaison aircraft. At this time, this was the one of two fixed-wing single-engine spotter aircraft that the Army used for artillery observation and general liaison air work. We had a skydiving club formed that was to make use of these aircraft for us to jump out of us recreationally. I drew the short straw 5 times to go up in these craft to jump, but each time the winds on the ground were too strong and I never got to go before I left Korea. Even farther back in some of the hill country, again near the DMZ and along a creek, this was a more authentic native village that didn't have any of the English writing or anything, and of course didn't have all of the public attitude that most of the other villages did. Took that to show Dad that even over there they still use the barber pole for the barber shop. There's a little business girl from Tokari who'd come up to the fence to try to talk out her man of the day or whatever. I've forgotten her name, but I suppose she's forgotten mine by now too. Here's an air site looking down on the terrain of Korea. They say the only level spots in Korea are rice paddies. Everything else is either straight up or straight down. You can imagine what terrible terrain this was to fight over during the war. This was on one of my R&R visits, either into Southeast Asia or going back to Tokyo. We're on a 124. Also known as the Crash Master. This is one of the street scenes in Tokyo. They say on any given day, at least at that time, if you drove around Tokyo, you would find at least 100 movies being filmed. By volume alone, it really is the movie capital of the world. By quality, it's probably something else again. So these are some general scenes of Tokyo as it was in 1960. This is the moat around the Imperial Palace in downtown Tokyo. It's loaded with hybrid carp, which are goldfish some 3 to 4 feet long. One of the theaters there. And remarkable architecture of wood and tile, wood carvings, gilt, bright paint that go into their traditional places of worship and their temples. There's one of the local flower girls, kind of a pleasant character. Some of their traditions are pretty respectable. All the little kids have to have an identity uniform, and so do their mama or their grandmothers who take them out for their walks. Busy street shops. Like one guy said, in some cliche, these people sure must like each other. There are so many of them living so close together. There's real tempura. Shrimp being broiled over a charcoal burner on the street. It's one of their street vending little enterprises. There's part of the Imperial Palace itself.